Tonight on the Fanatic Forum, another pair of Fanatic favorites. One, the whole kit and caboodle that started the Naked Gun series. And the other, a film that defies genres because it's blaxploitation, it's kung fu, it's a musical, it's a comedy, it's a whole lot of things here. We're going to talk about The Last Dragon and Police Squad right after this. Hey everybody, happy Friday and welcome to the Fanatic Forum. I'm your Prime Fanatic and host, George Buehler. Hope everybody's having a good one out there. It has been a week. Hope you guys are having a good one out there. Got a few bits of geek news here, but of course we have got some new comics to talk about, and then our two Fanatic favorites for this evening, which basically they don't necessarily work together as a pair because Police Squad, definitely the beginnings of the Naked Gun series that we know and love with Leslie Nielsen. Definitely a comedy, definitely a parody of old school police shows from basically the 50s and the 60s. And then you have The Last Dragon, which was basically produced by the head of Motown, Gordy. This was supposed to basically be kind of the beginning of an action, kung fu, music, kind of a contemporary 80s franchise, and basically it was a one and done kind of thing. A lot of interesting stories about this one here, and two basically things I grew up with, absolutely loving. So we're going to talk about this and then a whole lot more. But anyway, so of course, I was talking about a couple of different things here. First off, a couple streaming bits of news here. From wrestling fans, you may be aware of the fact that Impact Wrestling is going back to their original name of TNA Wrestling, Total Nonstop Action is what it stands for. Not the obvious, what do you think? But they're going back to that next year with their January pay-per-view, and then they've got a couple of new ones coming up after that. Well, they've got a new streaming service going to be starting up called TNA Plus. I'm not sure what the price point is or when it's actually coming out or whatever else, but it'll be available, everywhere you can find, streaming services, apps, Roku, Apple, Android, yada, yada, yada. List goes on and on. It'll be available everywhere. The interesting thing is that the company that owns this streaming service that is running TNA Plus is Endeavor, which is the same company that now runs and owns TKO, which is the company that's WWE and the UFC merged together. So it's like, that's interesting. So it's, granted, it'll be kind of separate entities. It's not really, TNA Wrestling has been around for a long time, but they've always been a smaller tiered company in comparison to the WWE. Not saying they're better, just smaller. Either way, they've been around for a long time. So I guess they don't necessarily see it as a threat or anything, but it's just kind of interesting that all that's kind of come together here. Another very interesting streaming thing that I'm excited about, if you are a subscriber to the formerly known as HBO Max, it's weird calling it just Max, but anyway, if you're a subscriber to that, starting next year, they're going to have an exclusive contract with A24 Studios, which means they'll have all the A24 library available on Max. But we'll have earlier access to A24 films that are released in theaters first. Then we'll get them on streaming faster. So that means, we got towards the end of the year, we've got the Iron Claw, the wrestling biopic, which I'm looking very forward to. That's coming out. And of course, we've got the Nosferatu movie that Robert Eggers is doing, who, of course, he was responsible for The Witch and Lighthouse. I can't wait for his Nosferatu remake next year. So, A24's got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming out. So, yeah, looking very forward to that. One thing we haven't talked about, this news is about a week old because the trailer's been out for a little bit. We finally have our first look at Furiosa, which is kind of the telling of oh, I can't remember her name. Pacing Furiosa's character in Mad Max Fury Road, Charlize Theron. Good lord. Anyway, so Anya Taylor-Joy will be playing the young Charlize Theron's character. So we get to know kind of her origin, how she got to the point where we see her in Fury Road. So Chris Hemsworth is also in the movie, kind of playing definitely the bad guy, but it's really cool because since basically this is a Mad Max movie, it's a George Miller movie, he gets to lean very heavily in his true native Australian accent. Matter of fact, he probably is going to put a little stank on it, I'm sure, because it kind of sounds that way in the trailer. Also, he's got where this weird kind of fake nose application he's got on as well, so I'm sure there's a story about that. But he's a little unrecognizable when you first see him in the trailer and then hear him. But yeah, so it's going to be kind of cool to see him. You really kind of bust out and be wacky in this movie, more so than he's seen him like in like the more recent Thor movies. So he really gets to kind of let go of this one. So I'm looking forward to that. We got, of course, trailers out for the new Godzilla and Kong movie. But the more important thing is that Godzilla -1 is currently in theaters right now, even in the United States. If you all have not seen this movie, if you've not heard anything about this movie, highly, highly, highly recommend checking this thing out. This is a Japanese-made film, so it is in subtitles. Just if you have a version of subtitles, you can actually kind of get over this because it will definitely go down very quickly as a classic Godzilla film. This is technically a prequel. It does take place before the original Godzilla. You care about the humans in this movie more so than you have in recent monster films, even in Japanese films. Just the effects are fantastic. It works on so many great levels. There's a lot of feel an homage to classic Godzilla movies, like how they used to make them, how the effects used to look, without feeling dated or like it's like a little Easter egg homage, but it works. It's like it comes in like right around 2 hours. I can't say enough good things about this movie. It kind of reminds me of the experience the first time I watched the South Korean film Train to Busan, the zombie movie. That's in subtitles as well, but it's like you get very invested in the movie. You care about the people in it, and so it flows very fast. Very fast paced movie. So even though you're reading the film, you kind of get absorbed in it. And -1 works that same way. And if you're any kind of Godzilla fan, or if you grew up watching the old films, you're like, I don't care for the old one, the new ones now. See -1. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. It's a sport, especially you get close to the holidays. Catch it before it misses theaters because it's kind of fun to see. An old school kind of Godzilla film in here, but the one thing that's just really precious about this film, of course, it's was made in Japan. It's got Japanese stars. Not many actually none of really American audiences are familiar with right now. But this was made for $15 million. It's already a box office smash in Japan and over and other countries overseas. It's doing very well here in the United States box office as well. So yeah, we're probably going to see a lot more of this. But this is a tremendous lesson to be learned. Granted, $15 million Japanese money is different than, $15 million, American. But nonetheless, when you've got like movies that come out with like $100, $200 million budgets that are nowhere near as good as this, and this came in way under that budget. So it's like, there's a lesson here somewhere. Yes. So yeah, again, if you haven't seen that, definitely go do so. Marvel has updated some more release stuff for their releases for next year. Basically, it's going to be kind of a smaller slate. So anybody who's got a little bit of burnout for superhero movies, you're going to get a little bit of a reprieve, at least on the Marvel Disney side. Now, the Marvel Sony stuff, that's basically Spider-Verse sort of thing like that, we're still expecting Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web. do what you want with those movies. I'm not interested in either, frankly. But for the MCU side of things, we've got Deadpool 3 still on track for this summer. I think June. I'm not 100%, maybe May or June, somewhere around there. But yeah, still on track for that. But that's it for the MCU. We've got 3 series for Disney Plus. Actually, well, technically 4. I don't know how long. I know What If Season 2 starts at the end of this year, right around Christmas time, but I'm not sure if they're releasing it week to week or if we get it kind of all at once. So the trailer kind of made it think like we might get it all at once. But as for next year goes, we've got Echo in January. We've got the Agatha Darkhold Diaries series, which is, we still don't know when that's coming out yet. And still the long-awaited X-Men 97 revival. Which is the revival of the 90s cartoon. So a lot of the original cast returned to it. So yeah, can't wait for that one here. So anywho, let's get on to the comics here. Oh, and we do have a couple of comments here, so got to get there. First off here, Jerry Slaughter, good to see you, sir. Says The Last Dragon is one of his favorite flicks. Yeah, mine too. I grew up on this one hardcore. It's hit the right time. I love Kung Fu. The music was good. And vanity. Let's be honest. Vanity. And love the UHF shirt. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, man. Well, hope you have a good one at work, man. Appreciate it. Seth Moore. Good to see you, sir. Said you're hyped for X-Men 97. Yeah, I'm waiting for a trailer. We know that they've shown clips, various Comic Cons. I think one a couple of years ago when it was initially announced, and then I think last year's Comic Con or this year's, where like people got to see almost an entire episode, or at least the first episode. So it's like, why we haven't seen any kind of trailer yet? It's coming this year. Where is this? Anyway, so we shall see. Anyway, so got some comics here. First off, this was one long overdue from DC Comics here because Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong #1 came out, about a couple months ago. So we're getting close to issue #3. So, but they had promised these sound effect variant covers here. So you get there's a Godzilla one and there's also a Kong one as well. They are polybagged. But the great thing about this, and everybody's been nerding out about this week here, resealable polybags. Traditionally, polybags are something that's sealed. You tear it open, and that thing is torn open for life. You can actually reseal these so you can enjoy the book and whatever else, but then put it back in there, give yourself a little bit extra protection. Because, granted, polybags are fine short term. As a collector's note, you don't want to keep a book in there long term with a polybag because eventually the bag will deteriorate and it can also hurt your book. Your traditional bags of boards, your Mylar, stuff like that, whatever you want, what you store your comics in, those are fine. But polybags, eventually they do break down. So it's a weaker kind of plastic. So, but nonetheless, it's very nice that we have this resealable one here. You've got a Brian Bucatello connecting cover here. So the Kong book is the other side of this here. So basically you get like the other half of Superman. The other side has Kong and the rest of the Justice League on here. But the cool thing about this book, and if you didn't get to hear that, one more time. Please don't sue me, Toho. And the Kong one, obviously, he growls and snarls and gives a big Kong roar and stuff like that too. And the Kong one is orange colored, so you get this nice colored one here. So these run $15. They're a little bit extra there. Also, another fun tip here: when you're storing these, you got to store them in a golden size bag and board because basically the device that's in here that makes the noise, which is very similar to like a Hallmark card, is a little thicker. And so, yeah, so golden bag and board for that. So we sold out of the Godzilla ones pretty quick over at Clobberin. But fortunately, we've reordered some. We got a couple of Kongs left. But yeah, all the Godzillas are sold out, but we will get some in very soon. Yeah, they were they're a lot of fun. I've already got my #1 normally, but I was like, I can't pass that Bradley Smith, good to see you, sir. Says he's seen the first Deadpool, but not the second. Very excited for 3. Okay, yeah, it's like 3. There's going to be a lot of stuff in there apparently for 3, and 2's a lot of fun. It's worth checking out. So speaking of movies that still haven't come out yet, when the heck is Toxic Avenger remake going to be released? That's a good question. We've seen somewhat of like a mini trailer for the Toxic Avenger remake that's got Peter Dinklage in it, which it's like a little teaser trailer. We haven't seen like a full trailer. We certainly haven't got a release date yet. So that is a great question, Bradley. And if I hear anything, I'll let y'all know about it. But yeah, that's on my radar as well for next year. So we shall see here. Seth says that if there were resealable polybags in the 90s, so many X-Force trading cards would be lost. That's a good point. And, you know, the ironic thing is that all those X-Force #1s that came with the trading cards, there's so many price differentiations because you've got like the newsstand version versus the direct edition versus like, I think there was some other kind of like Marvel anniversary stamp or something on the front. So there's 3 different kind of variations on what kind of stamp was on there. If it was a direct and a newsstand or this anniversary thing. And then depending on what card was also in there is how much it's worth. Currently, the only one that still has any value is the Deadpool trading card for an X-Force #1. The rest of the X-Force #1s you could probably get for $10 or less. So there you go. there's your 90s fun there for you because the crazy thing about the 90s era of comics is they printed so many of them that the value is not that great. So you know your Spawn #1 doesn't have as much value as say like your Spawn 150 because basically the print count was getting very low for Spawn at that point. People were starting to care a little bit less. And so there's like a run of like Spawn and Savage Dragon for about 100 issues each that they're a little pricey and very hard to get a hold of because the fans that have these books, they're not getting rid of them anytime soon. So they're still, you know, a great value and hard to get a hold of. So matter of fact, I'm helping Junior Fanatic Seth get his Savage Dragon collection back in order. And it's not easy. We've got thousands of books in that store. It's like, where are the Savage Dragon books? There you go. They're the same place all those Spawn books are. All right, that's the new stuff here. Next up here, we've got Batman 140. Of course, we've still got problems with Bruce's brain. He is a little bit broken right now. So his Zur and R mental backup persona has taken over and is causing a lot of problems. And he's decided basically to kind of, you know, this is a much more brutal, intense Batman, and definitely one that doesn't mind killing because he straight up goes for the Joker and he has every intention of killing him. I don't want to spoil everything that happens in this issue, but as I've been telling people all week that's coming to the shop, this may very well be an important issue because there is a certain important event in Batman history that is mirrored in this issue, except a little bit different. So, yes. But yeah, it does involve Batman and Joker here. A lot of other things happen in this issue, but yeah, I'm just loving the Chip Zdarsky run. You know, Jorge Jimenez's art, it's fantastic. So, zero complaints about the Batman run right now, and it's just been getting better and better. So, yeah, really, really, and I love this kind of like broken down Bruce Wayne here too. He's no resources, no team, you know, barely any gadgetry. He's living in like a brownstone. And his apartment kind of looks like, you know, when you see like those crazy people in conspiracy movies, whatnot, like they don't have a lot of furniture in their place. They got their conspiracy board on the wall there with all the strings attached to stuff like that. They got a few of their gadgetry and they're always building something. So they got a workbench. That's basically what Bruce's place looks like these days. So we are far, far, far away from stately Wayne Manor these days and Batman, which again makes him all the more interesting. A couple of things from Marvel here, a couple of #1s. One that intrigued me, we'll see where the series goes from here, but a new miniseries titled The Sentry. Now, of course, if you know your Marvel comic stuff, Bob Reynolds, aka the Sentry, who was like had the power of a million exploding suns, but essentially the Marvel Universe's version or a version of Superman if he was completely crazy. just split persona. His alter ego was his worst enemy called the Void, but it was also like the worst power of, the worst side of his power come to life. So essentially, he was his own worst enemy, extremely dangerous. But he was ripped in half by Null, the symbiote god, during the whole King in Black storyline. So we haven't seen the Sentry in a long time. His powers have now started to return to 5 random people, no connection whatsoever. And so now we've kind of almost got like a Highlander kind of situation here where some of them are feeling like, hey, if I take out the others, the power will get greater and I'll just have all the Sentry's powers. Because apparently when you get it, you start getting his memories as well. So you know what power it is, where it's coming from, that sort of thing like that. So again, very intrigued here. So written by Jason Liu. The art team is Luigi Zagaria and Arthur Heisel. So not familiar with this team here, so a younger group of people on here. But again, the art's good. I'm intrigued by the story. So yeah, we'll see where it goes from here. But also, we've got some familiar people as well. We've got Jessica Jones, who's kind of also a bit of rogue investigating all these power pop-ups, because essentially whenever someone gets these Sentry powers, there's a lot of like rampant destruction when it happens, because essentially now they're like imbued with all this power and they don't know what to do with it, and so sometimes they fly out of buildings, the buildings collapse, so all kinds of things. So, and also there's a new organization in the Marvel universe that Misty Knight is currently, doesn't seem like she's the head of it, but she's definitely one of the lead agents that kind of comes in and investigates superhero phenomena and stuff within the city, because currently in the Marvel universe, superheroes and vigilantes are illegal. So none of that stuff should be happening in New York unless you are part of the Thunderbolts, which they are the government-sanctioned group, but they're kind of non-existent at this point either. So yeah, a lot of turmoil in the Marvel universe. So it's interesting to see that power return and what they're going to do with it in the future. So we'll see here. Get to a couple of comments here real quick. Bradley Smith says, I think the reason Spawn wasn't popular was the crappy writing by Todd McFarlane. Yeah, he's kind of, Todd's writing started off really good with Spawn, but there's a lot of threads that he didn't tie up, and then he left the book, and then you've had a lot of other writers come and go from there. So apparently some of the stuff gets better, and then apparently when Todd decided to get back to Spawn when we're kind of gearing up for issue 300. So he gets in there somewhere around like the last 20 or so issues and kind of gets things going. So apparently Spawn does get better. So I don't know. You be the judge of that, but yeah, there you are. And Seth says, my Savage Dragon quest is a mountain to scale. It is, yes, because not necessarily because the books are expensive, they're just difficult to find. Some of them can be a little expensive. The Savage Dragon versus God probably is a pricey issue. It typically is. And I think the cover that has Barack Obama on it, I think is also a pricey book. So either way. But for the most part, they're just difficult to find. Back to our new ones here. One more from Marvel. We've got the new run of Thunderbolts. Speaking of them, this, on the other hand, is not the government-sanctioned team here. This essentially is a runoff from the Colin Kelly, Jackson Lansing run of Captain America Sentinel of Liberty. So this is essentially the story of what Bucky is going to be up to now. But he's got Sharon Carter in tow with him. Good old S.H.I.E.L.D. and former Madam Hydra stalwart, Allegra Contessa de Fontaine pops back up in here. Red Guardian shows up. But anyway, this is basically Bucky's team here, and essentially since he was a part of the outer circle and saw literally how the world really runs, where the power comes from, and what to actually do with it, sort of thing like that. So we got a lot of espionage, intrigue, that sort of thing. But Bucky's decided that there are many threats that are within the Marvel Universe that need to be eliminated. No nice guy stuff here, no superheroing. This is hunt and kill. And target numero uno is the Red Skull. And let me tell you, the ending of this book is killer. No pun intended. Yeah. So I love Kelly and Lansing as a writing team. So yeah, looking very forward to what this series is going to be. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a full series or if this is a mini series as well. So I think they're going to try for a full series. We'll see how it goes. Also, one little bit of note for Marvel fans: if you're currently reading Avengers Inc., do unfortunately have some bad news. The series is being canceled, and they're canceling it on issue 5. So, issue 5 will be the unfortunately final issue of Avengers Inc., which Al Ewing was writing, which that followed the exploits of Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, and this mystery partner taking the name Victor Shade, who may or may not partially be an android, kind of investigating certain crimes around the Marvel Universe. Kind of a, I would compare it to the old 80s series, kind of a heart to heart sort of thing like that. So it was like, high class crime or high class superhero kind of crime, a little bit of a quirky feel to it, and you had not a romantic pairing, but definitely a male female pairing for the thing. So, an odd comparison, I know, but I like the book. I like the way the style of it was. It wasn't a fantastic book, but I kind of liked it. And unfortunately, it's not faring well. But that happens. Unfortunately, as a common tale amongst comic books. Sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. When they don't, they get canceled. Pair of independents here before we get to our movies here. And we come through for the holidays with some good ones here. We have the Creepshow Holiday Edition for 2023 here from Image Comics. Of course, I've talked about how much I love the Creepshow series since Image Comics has brought it back. They're currently in the second volume here, so we've got another issue coming up, I think, either by the end of the year or somewhere in time in January. But this is just a one-shot in for the holidays. It has 2 stories in here. Both are Christmas related, and they do not disappoint. So if you love your good old-fashioned horror anthology, morality tale kind of stuff here, where the bad guys always get their just desserts in the end, sort of stuff like that. But of course, in classic brutal Creepshow ways. So nonetheless, yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. Lots of fun here. And another one shot here from the Boom Studios imprint Stuff of Nightmares, which is brought to us by R.L. Stine. Yes, that R.L. Stine. This is called Sleigh Ride. So again, this is a one shot here, but the story on this one is basically we've got a mall Santa who has lost his job and does not take it well. And apparently goes around deciding that, you know what, it's enough time for Santa giving presents. Santa should start taking presents for himself. And again, things happen. Yeah, there's a lot of murder, a lot of mayhem, as typical Stuff of Nightmares is. But yeah, I really enjoy this imprint here, and you could tell R.L. Stine is having a lot of fun getting to kind of really cut loose. I mean, this is not Goosebumps stuff here. This is gory, good old fashioned horror sort of thing like that. But yeah, you can tell he's just having a great time cutting loose here. Let's see. He's got a question here. What Creepshow issues would we recommend for a good read? That's actually a great question. Honestly, Creepshow works as a horror anthology that does not connect. So each issue will contain typically 2 stories, sometimes 3, usually like the first issue of each volume will have like 3 stories in there. But Image is on their second volume right now. So the first one came out a few years ago, I believe. And then, currently they're in volume 2 right now. I think issue 3, what came out previously. But the great thing about Creepshow is that you can buy any book you want. They got a couple of stories in there. You've got the Creeper, who's always your host for each story, kind of setting you up. You've got a different creative team for each story in each issue. So you've got basically a pair of creative teams. So it's really kind of like just fun picking. Like if you only like certain kind of writers or artists, they may pop up in Creepshow. You can check their book out. Or if you just only like certain covers, or you see what the stories are, sort of thing like that. So that's kind of the fun. It's kind of the same way with like Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror sort of thing like that. You can literally pick up any issue and enjoy it for what it is and not have to worry about getting the previous issues like you're missing anything like that. So, yeah, rip loose and have fun, Bradley, because, yeah, that's the great thing about Creep Show. It's like I said, just like the old Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror, House of Secrets, House of Mystery, Ghosts, all those horror anthology books. That you just picked up the one that had a cool cover, or you knew you liked the writer or artist, or maybe the story looked good in there or something like that. So yeah, that's the way I'd go. So we're going to take a break here for just a second to acknowledge our sponsor, Comic Books for Kids, and then we'll be right back with our movies for today. Be right back.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month, we add more.
Visit cb4k.org.
And we're back. And of course, just telling you guys what I was talking about last week, this year's Multiverse fundraiser, which is basically the annual fundraiser that we do through the whole Cereal Box network. So we have the weekend of January 25th through the 27th. Basically, you get all your favorite shows, but we have special guests come on. You can donate to Comic Books for Kids, who is our charity this year. You can donate to them. You can get, basically be put in for door prizes, all kinds of cool stuff we're giving away. But yeah, it's just basically, it's an online con. So it's basically just works like, Fanatic Forum normally does, or any of the other shows you watch throughout the Cereal Box network. But just, special guests, all that sort of thing like that. And maybe a little bit of, intermingling between other hosts and stuff like that as we toss over to each other. But yeah, usually I think we're starting somewhere around like 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning, and we go to like 4 o'clock each day. So yeah, all kinds of fun stuff. But my special guest for the Fanatic Forum for that weekend, which I will be on a special time at 6 p.m. Eastern as opposed to 7. My special guest is I get to talk to Marvel artist legend Bob Hall, which I'm very excited about. Bob is an extremely prolific artist. I grew up with a lot of his cover art and interior art, especially I'm a big Avengers guy, as you know. So he was all over Avengers, West Coast Avengers. But series like Marvel Team Up, G.I. Joe, we saw a lot of his cover art for that. Later on, some of the Valiant stuff like Armed and Dangerous, Shadow Man. He was on a little bit of DC, but not too much. He mostly stuck with Marvel and the Indies. Then later on, he got into writing a little bit more, so branched out with that. And he's a bit of a theater nut as well, and has written several plays. So we're going to talk about all of that kind of stuff and a whole lot more, I'm sure. But yeah, I can't wait. He's his art was a big part of my childhood, so it'd be nice to give him his flowers and all kinds of questions and stories, because Bob loves to tell stories. So yeah, I can't wait that stuff. All right. So for our picks for Fanatic Favorites this week here, I've got, like I said, 2 that did not match up at all here. But the first one here is Police Squad in color. I bought this DVD a long time ago when this came out. Let's see whether this is 2006 is when this initially came out. So, but the series Police Squad was initially released in 1982, aired on CBS. Only 6 episodes were made, and before the series was canceled. This was supposed to be kind of the next vehicle to, basically since Leslie Nielsen got so much new fame with Airplane, and then kind of doing a lot more comedies that he initially did not do before. Because traditionally he was a character actor, leading man sort of thing like that. So he played tough guys, romantic guys, leading men, heroes, all sorts of things like that before he basically found his comedy niche. And that's basically what he did for the remainder of his career and life. But anywho, like I said, Police Squad, for whatever reason, it just didn't click with TV audiences. They didn't get it. The ratings didn't, do very well. So again, like I said, after 6 episodes, it was canceled, which is extremely unfortunate because it was, if you enjoyed Airplane, and later on, like Top Secret, and then eventually, of course, the Naked Gun films, which the first one comes out in 1988, I believe. So it was basically like 6 years before they got the movie off the ground. Then basically we get 3 movies, and those were hits. So the rest is history. But the series is very much like the Naked Gun films, where it starts off with the Ira 11 theme, and you've got the top of the police car with the light siren on there. Now, of course, the movies took it one further with basically the police car going everywhere, then basically going in places cars shouldn't normally go, and all sort of jokes there. But you always had very traditional opening credits. With Leslie Nielsen just looking like the tough guy cop, or whatever else, busting some bad guys, and the rest of the cast in there. A running joke in every episode was there was always a guest star announced, but the guest star basically was killed in the opening credits. Like the pilot, Lauren Green from Bonanza and Battlestar Galactica fame, is basically thrown out of the back of a car, and he's got a knife in his chest. So special guest Lauren Green, and Lauren Green's dead. sort of things like that. They would also have special guests because there was a running gimmick of Jimmy the Shoeshine Kid, which basically this was not a kid; he was a grown man who probably looked like he was in his 40s at that point. But Jimmy the Shoeshine was the informant for Frank Drebin, but also was the informant for anybody else that would come up afterwards. So you'd have a police captain asking questions, a fireman asking questions. And you got Dr. Joyce Brothers popping in for a cameo, asking psychology questions, or a doctor's asking how to perform surgery. And then, of course, the favorite one in the final episode is Dick Clark shows up, asking about what ska music is. And so Johnny the informant has to tell him what ska music is, and then basically the running joke afterwards is that, oh, hey, you got any more of that Eternal Youth Cream formula, Eternal Youth Formula cream. And so basically he, hands him this thing of what it looks like Avon cream, and he just starts spreading this white stuff all over his face and runs off. So there you go. So lots of, gags like that. But, this whole series is nothing but joke after joke after joke of either physical comedy, sight gags, lines thrown away where basically, Leslie kind of, reacts and, turning his head sort of thing like that. So a lot of the stuff you love, especially in the first Naked Gun film, you see a lot of these jokes pop up throughout the series here. The only other person aside from Leslie Nielsen that carries over from the series to the movies is the lab guy. Basically, he's the only one because you've got the Ed Harkness character played by Alan North in the television show, but then when they get to the movies, he's played by George Kennedy. The character of Ed Nordberg, who is also one of the cops that in the movies is played, unfortunately, by O.J. Simpson. In the TV series, Nordberg is not introduced until the 3rd episode, and then when he finally is, he's basically like a white Italian guy. But he is still doopy, and he's not running on all of his faculties, and he's a simple fellow, but he's a sweet boy. But so, but yeah, you basically usually have your typical. You've got a case, and you got to solve it, or there's a murder or robbery or something like that. So there's always the typical drama of a police procedural, where you have to solve a case or do whatever else. But then, of course, a lot of hilarity happens, sight gags, all that sort of stuff like that. Another common sight gags is that every episode, the episode title comes up, and you get basically Ring of Fear is the episode title that comes up, but then the voiceover says a dangerous assignment. And that happens every episode. So basically, there's one thing that pops up, and then it says another. So again, just the same kind of jokes that you love from the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams are just all over this 6-episode series here. So I think currently you can still get the DVD, even though it may be a UK one. It's still region free. But there's also, I believe, kind of a Blu-ray box set that has all 6 episodes of Police Squad and the 3 Naked Gun films. Or you can basically, I think you can stream this or rent it on Amazon Prime as well. So it is available for streaming. But yeah, if you've never seen the original Police Squad series, I highly, highly recommend, especially if you love the Naked Gun movies, Airplane, you love Leslie Nielsen stuff. Yeah, highest recommendation. Please check that out. It is hilarious. Let's see here. Bradley's asking, did Police Squad inspire Police Academy, or was that one of National Lampoon's film? Actually, no, neither one was National Lampoon. Both were independent. Like I said, the Police Squad is part of the Jerry and David and Jerry and David Zucker, and then Jim Abrams, kind of their whole family of their comedies. And, of course, they only had, one series there. But Police Academy was a different franchise that wasn't connected to National Lampoon. It was more like, it didn't, I don't know if it necessarily inspired it, because this was more of like, not so much Police Academy wasn't so much a direct parody of, the old police TV shows as Police Squad was, and the Naked Gun movies were as well. Police Academy is more of kind of like, hey, these other movies like, Revenge of the Nerds and Animal House and stuff like that are popular. What if we do that with cops? So that's kind of what that was. So, so I'm not sure if that, as far as I know, I don't think there's any inspiration, but it is interesting that we kind of have, there's not a lot of comedies out there that are either like, straight making fun of police or showing them in a different light. So, I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. All right, our second film for tonight here, and this one, like I said, defies genres, because you think it's a kung fu movie, you think it's a blaxploitation film, but it is filled with music, it's filled with comedy, it's got a ton of heart. I'm talking about 1985's The Last Dragon. This was produced by Barry Gordy, who was the father of Motown. And I realized when I was doing the write-up about this that I said, oh, this is only foray in a film, except for Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany and a lot of Diana Ross movies. So, no, this was not Barry Gordy's only foray into movies, but it was the only kind of action movie, because they thought, hey, there's a lot of other blaxploitation stuff that's out there. Why can't we do, one that's basically kind of, a little bit more our speed, has, our music in it, because we've got all these other artists here under the Motown labels. We can, put that in there, and do kind of our own thing here. So that was the initial idea. And they came up with an idea of like, oh, hey, what if we get, some kid who's like really into Kung Fu, and basically, they kind of just made up the story around just, like fish out of water kind of kid, even though he grew up in the neighborhood. But, then he goes on to, fight crime and do, heroic things, whatnot. So there was, of course, a drive to find out who is going to play the lead character of Leroy Green, a.k.a. Bruce Leroy. So they really were going after, like, every black actor who was up and coming at that point in the 80s. And it's really interesting, because you've got this list, like, one of the more obvious choices because of his martial arts background, and he was also probably the right age, Billy Blanks, who we know from a lot of, B and C movie, kung fu and action films, the late 80s, especially through the 90s. Then, of course, he went on to create the Tai Bo exercise program. That's basically what he's best known for. And the guy hasn't aged in 30 years, probably due to Tai Bo and his fitness regime. So good on you, Billy. But also other people that were considered for the role were Wesley Snipes, Mario Van Peebles, Lawrence Fishburne, and my personal favorite, Denzel Washington. If you know The Last Dragon, can you imagine Denzel Washington playing Bruce Leroy? So, yeah, interesting there. Instead, we go with basically a new star, someone that we weren't familiar with. This literally was his first film. A gentleman by the name of Timac. Just the casting directors and the producers loved him. They loved his energy, and he was just this great looking dude. He had a martial arts background. He seemed to have some good charisma about him. Very polite guy. Didn't seem to have a lot of ego to him, sort of thing like that. So, like, that's our guy. We can make a star out of him, yada, yada, yada. And so we get this, we've got our, producers, we've got our writers. So now basically we have to find our director. This was actually a fantastic choice because they chose Michael Schultz. Now, Michael Schultz basically is greatly known for, tons and tons and tons of black cinema. Essentially starting in the 70s, doing a little bit of TV in the late 60s, but really doing a lot of stuff in the 70s. Working, I think he did doing 3 films with Richard Pryor, but he would do like Cooley High, the original Car Wash, Busted Loose. So there's two right there with Pryor, Crushed Groove, and one of my personal favorites of the 80s, Disorderlies. That's right, starring the Fat Boys. Let me tell you, that movie is funny as hell, and those guys should have done more comedies because it worked. That was stupid. It was like watching like Three Stooges with like rap in it. It worked. It was awesome. Anyway, so yeah, Michael Schultz was handed the reins for directing this one. Fantastic choice here. And like I said, this movie is you couldn't have, put this in any other decade aside from the 1980s. It screams everything 80s here, but it is full of life and color. You got music by like Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, who of course were staples of the Motown label. Then you had like newer groups like DeBarge, who were later on El DeBarge when he left them and did solo stuff. But the big hit from this movie was Rhythm of the Night. Then you had other stalwarts like Willie Hutch, who basically he was kind of more of a producer performer, but he of course did The Glow, which strangely enough that kind of popped back up in pop culture again with I think Planet Fitness ads. So yeah, we're starting to see The Glow pop up again here. But the movie also stars Vanity, which she was gorgeous back in the day here. She plays Laura Charles, who she runs a club and a dance TV show called Seventh Heaven, which, of course, if you were young enough to not realize that basically back in the day, like dance TV shows were a huge thing. And a lot of times you had some regional shows that were big. Then you also had like shows that went national and were seen, all across the country. But literally, it was kids dancing to popular music. You had stuff like Soul Train, you had Dance Fever, you had American Bandstand. The list goes on and on and on. Like I said, there were even regional ones as well. You had 80s movies like Girls Just Want to Have Fun that literally were surrounded around an entire one of these dance shows here. But nonetheless, The Last Dragon had one of their own. So Vanity was the star and producer of the show. And so again, this basically, she would do some of her songs or would play popular songs, whatever else, and the kids would dance to it. It's all on TV. You've got a producer, entrepreneur, general bad guy by the name of Eddie Arcadian, who is kind of pressuring Laura Charles to play his stable of artists, their videos on her shows, and basically all of his artists suck. They're bad. Even like he's got his girlfriend who does songs, and she's terrible as well. So basically, Laura has good taste, doesn't want to play her stuff. So he basically decides, I'm going to kidnap her, and there you go. All the while, basically, our titular hero Bruce Leroy sees this kidnapping happen and tries to basically, basically he's going to end up freeing her. On the other hand, though, we have this gang of basically kung fu bad guys led by Show Nuff, the Shogun of Harlem, who's played by Julius Carey, who basically he's done tons of work since this movie in both film and television. He is not a kung fu guy. That was kind of his chief complaint about the film, is that he's like, the acting stuff is great, but it's like, I look like crap doing the kung fu stuff because I don't know what I'm doing. So he worked a lot and trained a lot, but he did not have the background that like Timac had and a lot of other people that are in the movie that are either like stunt performers or other people who had martial arts backgrounds that are basically just given kind of little bit characters. Interestingly enough, Ernie Reyes Jr. is in the film. He's very young. He's itty bitty, but yeah, he's in the movie. And of course, he goes on to have a acting career, stunt career. He's a freaking Ninja Turtle. So, he does a lot of other things here. But yeah. So anyway, so we've got basically, this evil Eddie Arcadian and then Show Enough are both, thorns in the side for Bruce Leroy. Show Enough is definitely a much more powerful fighter than Bruce is at this point. He's still trying to gain his confidence, still trying to, learn the ways of, the fighter and things like that. And his master has told him of this, apparently the glow, this power that kind of comes from within. Basically, it's like your chi force, in Chinese, lore and kung fu. It's basically, it's in your inner energy that you can actually summon and, use outwardly. Especially, you can train yourself and do this, as a fighter. I don't know if you can actually like physically glow or make fireballs like Iron Fist does, but sort of thing like that. So eventually, Bruce, does get the glow and kick the ass of Bruce Lee of Show Enough and his gang. Gets Laura Charles back from Eddie Arcadian and gets his big kiss and all that kind of good stuff here. So, like I said, just the movie is filled with just a lot of heart, a lot of fun, a lot of comedy. And just it's one of those 80s staples that it unfortunately didn't do great at the box office. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a marketing issue or whatever else. But it lives in the hearts of a lot of people who watched it and grew up with it like I did. So it deserves its praise. And there has been talk over the years of a revival, kind of legacy sequel sort of thing like that. Because originally there was going to be a sequel about a year or so later, but Timac basically turned it down. His experience on the film was a little mixed, and then his reaction to his initial stardom also was a little mixed. So he kind of like, I'm just going to leave acting behind. And so he's basically spent the last couple of decades helping kids in underprivileged areas and, basically, building confidence, being, positive role model kind of stuff. He does a lot of martial arts training he's got his own dojo. So he's been keeping up. The dude has barely aged. He just looks, he looks just as good as he did in the 80s. So it's like, so there's a very serious talk of a kind of a legacy sequel coming up. I don't know. It hasn't been anything, hasn't been anything shot just yet, but it's been passed around in like the last couple of years recently that they're trying to get things going for this again. So we shall see. Also, another little interesting tidbit: William H. Macy has a blink and you'll miss it cameo here. Basically, he is a producer for Seventh Heaven that works for Loyal Charles, and basically he has been getting pressured by the evil Eddie Arcadian to play these videos, and maybe he seems to be in debt to Eddie in a way that he is unfortunately doesn't want to be in. So, it's a very blink and you'll miss it cameo towards the beginning of the movie, and the jacket he is wearing, I'll let you be the judge of that one, but it's there's some interesting fashion in the film, and William H. Macy's haircut and jacket are part of that interesting fashion. Also another interesting thing too is Keisha Knight Pullum. Of course, we know her as Rudy from the Cosby Show. She is in the film, and literally the Cosby Show has barely been going a year, so she's like very teeny tiny. She's Leroy's little sister. Absolutely, like I said, I cannot say enough good things about The Last Dragon. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. Unfortunately, it is streaming for rentals. You can rent it on YouTube and Amazon and stuff like that. But I don't believe it's streaming on any service right now. So, but the Blu-ray is available. Let's see, who released this one? Oh, Sony released this one. Okay, yeah. So, it's still under the Sony TriStar label. So, the Blu-ray 30th Anniversary Edition is still widely available. And it's got a lot of extra features on here too. Making of stuff like that, interviews, commentary, all that good stuff like that. The original trailer. So, definitely worth checking out. It's a great transfer and all that good stuff. So. All right. Well, that is it for this evening for our pair of Fanatic Favorites. Next week is our last week of Fanatic Favorite pairs, and we're going to go a little modern noir here because I've got a couple of interesting movies here. Definitely, these would be under the more obscure banner here, but we're going with a older Michael Caine film, Pulp, which is one of my favorites of his later 70s, early 80s films. And then the Ryan Johnson, his breakout debut film, Brick, which stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is a 40s era Dashiell Hammett style of mystery noir kind of film set in a modern day Southern California high school. The entire cast is teenagers, but they don't act like teenagers, and it's a murder mystery kind of movie here with an unconventional sleuth and a very unconventional cast, and a fantastic film by a guy who he goes on to do lots of good things. And of course, we know he loves him some mystery stuff thanks to his Knives Out series. So, yeah, we're going to talk about both those for our last two pairs of Fanatic Favorites. So, with that, I leave you guys for this week. So, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. So, I invite you all to, of course, like and share the Fanatic Forum with those who have not seen me before here. All are welcome. Please join the conversation here. But yeah, we will return one more time next week here, and we will see you then next week. So have a good one. Take care.